Hi Amy, it's great to see you this week for your fourth Rethink Places podcast. I'm really looking forward to hearing about what you've got to say this week. So just a reminder, Rethink Places is an online community that you're building that is bringing together different stakeholders from all sorts of backgrounds to rethink how you do collaboration to make a bigger impact quicker and more effectively around a common purpose. So, without further ado, what have you learned this week?
Yes, it's been another good week. So this week saw us have our first online session, a sharing session to hear about a case study called Jumpstart with Stockport Council. So we've already had one kind of face-to-face meeting as part of the community. So this is the first one that we're doing online, and it was great. Rachel Roberts-Newton from Stockport Council joined us to share a case study which is all about getting young people work experience to help them move into more permanent and full-time work. And it's a brilliant case study and a really good example of what this community is trying to do, which is to look at really great pieces of work and think about how we can amplify them and scale them further. And we had a really good combination of those from the community that were able to join the call, and it was just so good to hear Rachel just talking through in a very kind of open and honest way the challenges of Jumpstart, the things that Jumpstart has achieved and why, from her perspective, it's worked. And just to kind of give a really high level flavour of what Jumpstart is, it's all about providing work experience to young people through placements, and it's an opportunity for them to try out work for a period of time, but they're also paid a nominal fee during that period of time as well as an incentive. And it's really about bringing together the council, employment, charities, that all enable this to happen, and it's been award-winning and a really good example of how this can work well, and again another example of collaboration.
Fantastic. And this is all about predominantly care experienced young people, isn't it? So I'm
It is.
guessing it isn't just as simple as turning up for a work placement. I think from what Rachel has said, there's a lot of things that sort of sit beneath the iceberg, as it were. So turning up for the placement and getting reimbursed from expenses, etc., is one thing, and that in itself takes time to coordinate. But there's this whole other support structure that goes around that. What did you learn about that you were maybe unaware of, or the community were unaware of, before you heard what Rachel had to say?
I don't think there are any surprises in knowing how complex that is, but I think for me the takeaway was it being very much centered on what the young person needs. So really thinking about sometimes the chaos of life, how sometimes things move forward and then move backwards, and staying with that young person whilst they experience the kind of the ups and downs of life. So it was definitely felt like the young person was at the center of the model. But also the employer and the managers and the people that work with the young people, really kind of helping them to support well. So you need the kind of the person in the middle that really brokers and helps that, but you need people, managers and colleagues who understand what they're getting themselves into and really making it young person focused, and all of that done with really limited budget, but amplified by the support of charities. So we heard like really good stories where charities have provided clothes for interviews, equipment, travel expense, all sorts of things that just kind of removing barriers essentially.
Yeah.
That are known and well considered and people are aware of, but it's really practically addressing them. And I think all of that in the same week where the Labour Party in their conference were talking about getting young people into work, and that's great in at high level, but these barriers exist and we need case studies like Jumpstart to show how you overcome those barriers.
Yeah, and Rachel's phenomenal. She works really hard
She is.
to make it happen, and she's really understanding. She absolutely gets it, and you recognize that people like that are the linchpin to success or failure for the employer, potential employer,
Yeah.
and for the young person as well. So really powerful stuff. So in terms of action off the back of that, so you've had an online event on the community members have attended that maybe would never have met Rachel, who now have.
Yes.
What sort of actions are coming out of that initial meeting, the learning that's been shared? What's going to happen next?
So for the wider community, I know that conversations have already started. I've seen some things on LinkedIn, just making some of those connections. In fact, actually, just with my Magna hat on, we're already starting to think about whether that type of scheme could work with us and whether we were able to do more in that space. So we're just giving some thought to that. We really want to bring, to explore more with Rachel some of the practicalities. So we've got a few questions, so we'll carry those conversations on, but we'll carry them on in the community, because I think if we've got questions from an employer perspective, others might have the same. So the plan is to kind of really think about how something like Jumpstart could work more widely, or a version of. And I know from a charity perspective, Andrew's Charitable Trust are also thinking about how they can take that learning into working with the charities that they already have relationships with, where they're working with young care leavers as well.
That's really powerful stuff. And part of Magna's Better Future strategy, you're looking at creating a better future for work, aren't you? And I guess that's looking at your future talent pipeline, and geographically, you're based in an area where maybe that pipeline isn't always easy to access. So I suppose the greater diversity of skills and people you have access to, the better, really. So
completely. And also, if you think of the nature of our work in social housing, the more, and I one of the things that's really resonated with me this week is someone saying, whose voices are we not hearing? And I think from an intergenerational perspective, bringing in young people with lived experience has a knock-on advantage to the type of work that we're involved in as well. So the more that we're thinking about how inclusive we can be as an employer, and thinking particularly about the young care leavers or those with that experience, can only add richness into our business. So there's a real win-win in this type of way of working. It's about doing the right thing for communities and social impact, but also it has a huge knock-on impact for our own customers if we've got that type of thinking within the organization. And also, just kind of coming back to the wider Rethink Places and what we're learning around collaboration. I joined a really good presentation this week from Rebecca Robbins, who's written a book called 5 Generations at Work. She did a talk about the research that went into that book, and she talked a lot about that cross collaboration, both within organizations and then out with as well, as being almost like an organizational muscle, something that's got to be nurtured and developed like we would in a gym. So really thinking, exactly. So really thinking about positive action around collaboration, and what I'm seeing in practicality through Rethink is exactly that. Really listening to others, building trust, making sure whose voice is in the room, who are we hearing from, and sometimes my head could explode with ideas and thoughts about how things could be better in ways that I don't think would have come about had we not worked in this way. So yeah, really positive in terms of the actions that are coming from this, but also just the thoughts around what does collaboration really mean, and it makes such a difference.
I love that sort of horizontal muscle of collaboration, and of course you need to exercise it, and it gets stronger and stronger, and then other people can also see it, and they want to be part of that. They want to buy into it. They want a piece of the action, so it becomes almost contagious, which I think is mind-blowing and very powerful. This week you've talked about two really interesting learning points there. In all honesty, if you were to compare another week without your online community Rethink Places, do you think you would have learned as much in the same week? What's changed?
I think what's changed is definitely the variety of voices, my real focus on not just looking at the problem, but looking at those that are doing something practical and strong and good in the world. So I think that has changed. I think it's just opening my mind up to different perspectives, and not the usual trodden path of the same ways of researching or understanding kind of actions and collaborations than before. So for me, it's just the variety, it's the linking up of things that you're hearing in the world at the moment. And it's so interesting because the talent conference that I talked about, I mean, collaboration was pretty much a topic of conversation in every presentation or speech around those thinking about talent on a global basis. So it feels like we're onto something, definitely
Brilliant.
having those kind of moments of revelation. I think
Good.
I'm not fully formed in my
But
thinking on
it's
it
good,
yet,
isn't
but
it?
it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, fantastic. You're on the right path. You're in the right sort of zone, and
Yes.
you're gathering and attracting and soliciting the right community members to join you, and you've got a shared vision, which is brilliant.
Yes.
So we were talking earlier on, just before we started recording, about the opportunity for scale now.
Yes.
I know that's something that you and your colleagues are thinking about. So what's happening next with that?
Yep. So next week we've got a meeting where we are going to be really exploring what does scale look like. I think for probably for the last month, I've gained enough confidence to know that this is the right thing to do, and so therefore feel really confident talking about the opportunity now to scale this Rethink Places platform, and importantly scaling this way of working as a way of kind of thinking about collaboration. So I'm really looking forward next week to just talking about what the options might be for that, and what the appetite is from others going into it. And I'm really deeply thinking about how I share my learning so far, because it is important that going into this you realize it takes time, it takes energy, the impact is so worth it. But it's not like you can just do it on the side of your job. It's something you wholeheartedly have to go into.
I think you've hit the nail on the head when you said there, it's sort of rethinking, it's scaling, not community growth, but it's scaling growth through a different way of doing things, isn't it? So it's
Exactly.
adapting how you work
Yes.
in order to scale how you collaborate differently using
Yeah.
these new digital tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, look forward to speaking to you next week and hearing about how that meeting goes and what your plans are and what direction that you're going to go in.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.